Hey, Beady friends, it's Meredith from Beadalon and Artistic Wire. Welcome to another class for the Michaels Community Classroom. So today, I feel like I start every class because this is a really fun class, but I really like this one today. We are going to be making a beaded Easter egg using the netting stitch. We're going to talk about materials. We're going to talk about the stitch, about bead weaving, some tips and tricks for all of the things that you will need to know, whether you are a seasoned bead weaver and just really like this project, or this is kind of your first foray and you thought, well, that's a really interesting decoration. I'd like to learn how to do that. And if that's the case, I think you will be pleasantly surprised by how simple and easy it is to do. Now, I have also messed around with the bead counts. We're going to talk a lot about bead counts today as well. So if you don't necessarily have the large, I think they call it the ostrich Easter or the ostrich egg size, that is okay, because I also made this project with a slightly smaller Easter egg. This is one that breaks apart that you would be able to put some treats in. And then Michaels also has these decorative eggs. And so same technique, exact same beads, messing around a little bit with the counts, and you can make everything from a humongous egg to a little teeny tiny one and everything in between. So once again, now that everybody is here and bopped on, I'm Meredith from Beadalon and Artistic Wire, and I work for, I just said I work for Beadalon and Artistic Wire, and I'm very excited to be teaching this class for Michaels today. So as we are getting started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, this class is being recorded. So if there's something I go over a little bit too quickly or I stumble through the words and you didn't quite catch it, the class will be posted in about 24 to 48 hours on the Michaels Community Classroom YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch over and over again until you have the stitch down pat. Also, Yvette from Beadalon is hanging out in the chat room. So she has posted the instructions that were included in the class link. But if you have any questions at all, shoot them into the chat. She will be there to answer your questions. And if it's something that I don't see as this scroll is scrolling by, she'll interrupt me and make sure that I give a little answer there to the questions. So I also want to welcome another very special guest here for class today. Danielle Wix from John Bead is joining us. I don't know if you can see her photo up there, but Danielle and I were like right here in these past couple of months. She is also an instructor for the Michaels Community Classroom, and she and I did basically two of, not exactly the same, but it's similarly inspired projects. And you have probably seen her two-drop peyote egg using that very same egg form, the big ostrich egg, but she went a little crazier than I did and did two-drop peyote all the way around. So if you bop over and check out, click around on the Michaels website, you'll be able to see that as well. So welcome, Danielle. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any seed bead questions, Danielle is the expert on such things. So if she is in the chat room, she'll be able to answer any seed bead questions. And I think that is all of the housekeeping that I have to do. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I think we are ready to get started. So like I said, for those of you who are joining me live, thank you so very much for being here. And for everyone who's watching on the replay, thank you as well. It's going to be a great class. We're going to do a little bit of beading along together, but for the most part, this will be a watch and learn class. So here is the first material that we are going to need for our project today. Not too many things that we need, and possibly things that are already in your stash. Hopefully you have some WildFire in your stash for sure. So just in case you don't know, this is WildFire beading thread. It is a thermally bonded thread that has a special coating on it, so it is very difficult to pierce it with your needle. And that's very important when you're bead weaving. Seasoned bead weavers will definitely be nodding along with me. You definitely want a stringing material that is not easily pierced with your needle. It is also, it also does not stretch. So similarly, when you're doing your bead weaving, you don't want your stringing material to stretch, because over time, of course, your design is going to sag. And we certainly don't want that to happen. It is also waterproof, which is a nice plus. So you can do a nice woven bracelet and wash your hands without being worried about anything happening to your piece. And it's also color fast, which means that the color will not come off on your hands. And we have it in several different colors, 3 of which are available in Michaels. My original project, I used white to weave because of course I have a white background and light colored beads. However, today I'm going to be weaving with the black color just because it's going to be easier for everybody to see the thread path. I will often do that when I am demonstrating a project. I'll use a darker color or a thicker cord, so it is really, really easy to see. Now I am using the 0.008 diameter. The WildFire is also available in a 0.006 diameter. And of course, 0.006 is a little bit thinner than the 0.008. So why am I using 0.008 today? Well, because the project that I'm making needs a little bit more structure to it. And I'm only going to be going through the seed beads once, or at the very most twice. So because I'm using size 8 seed beads and Superduos, I don't have to worry about little teeny tiny beads and many thread passes going through them. So you can see how large comparatively the holes on those size 8 seed beads and Superduos are. So I will have no problem using that WildFire to thread through the beads the number of times that I need to. So to do the project here, I use 3 different colors of seed beads. So I use these really pretty purple chalk John bead, size 8 seed beads. I used the pink chalk, we're sensing a theme here, and then the opaque lemon yellow. And I thought that that just made a really nice Easter color palette. And then I used the John bead white, just straight up white, Superduos as a way of doing the netting stitch. Now you can do this type of stitch without the Superduos, but A, I really like Superduos and I like using them whenever I possibly can. And B, it looks really neat, and it looks a little bit different than if you had just used a bead with one hole. So that's kind of a little bit of the design thought behind it. And of course, if you want, just use one color, right? Everything in your color selection is changeable. So here I just used a solid color. I didn't do any variation. I could change each net, each diamond, each triangle, the egg color, everything. So just a couple of ideas as we're getting started to figure out what you want for your design for your egg. And like I said, Michaels has a ton of different shapes, different sizes. 2.5 centimeters, I think, is the, oh no, I'm sorry, 2.5 inches is kind of the standard Easter egg hunt egg size. And this pattern will work for that as well. So you might recognize this type of pattern from a beaded holiday ornament. So we did that as a class, gosh, what is it now? March, a couple of months ago now. And I appreciate everyone who has stuck with the Beadalon classes and the Michael's Community Classroom through this whole time. I love going through, and as the comments are popping up, seeing familiar names. So sometimes I do take for granted that people know what all of these different seed beads mean and what they are. This is a Superduo. It's a double hold seed bead. And the cool thing about the Superduos, let's see if I can really show, is its shape. So it has a shape, it's almost like it has a dimple on the top and a dimple on the bottom. So it's not really a true diamond. It's a Superduo shape. I think that it's actually a thing, right? It's a Superduo shape. And it has two holes, which gives it some unique properties and sometimes some unique challenges, but nothing that can't be overcome as you are doing it. So as we are beading and as we are getting started, I'm going to talk about some of those challenges and some of those unique properties. So I mentioned the WildFire, I mentioned the seed beads. The last thing that we need for our project today is a needle. Okay, so don't be scared of needles when they come into projects. I feel like sometimes when you have to thread a needle, warning signals come up. But what I want to show is a great way. That one's already done. So let's go to the side that hasn't already been prepped and show you how it works. So I am using a jewel loom needle, which are sold at Michael's. We're having some trouble finding the actual link for this particular needle online for some reason. So I will say that a size 10 needle, a size 12 needle, a collapsible eye needle, a big eye needle, any of these needles are great to do this project. So if you don't happen to have a jewel loom or a jewel loom needle, any hard needle is going to be great for you. And what I just did is I took my chain nose pliers and I flattened the tip of the WildFire. And I'm using about 6 feet of WildFire. You will have to add thread in the middle of your project if you're using 6 feet, but anything more than 6 feet, it's really unwieldy. And I find it is much easier to add thread than it is to untangle thread constantly. So now that I have my tip nice and flat, all I need to do is just place my needle over that tip. So let me do that one more time with a little bit of a better angle so you can see. I'm just placing my needle over the thread. And then what I like to do is take my flat nose pliers again and just pull the WildFire through. And now we're ready to go. So please do not be intimidated by having to thread a needle. That tip will actually work for needles as small as a size 15 and the WildFire. Sometimes it does try your patience sometimes. I won't mince words on that, but eventually you should be able to get it with a little bit of patience. So don't be afraid of threading a needle. So first step, and like I mentioned, Yvette has posted these instructions. They were also emailed at the time of class, and I just learned that they're actually included in the on the sign up pages now, which is very, very cool. Sarah Ellis pointed that out to me the other day. So I'm going to pick up alternating one size 11 seed bead and one Superduo 6 times. Now, one of the things that you want to be wary of when you're working with Superduos is making sure that both of those holes are free. And we're going to come back to that in a moment. I had Danielle from John Bead on a Facebook Live with me a couple of weeks ago, and we both admitted that we we don't always check our holes. We like to live dangerously, but it is good advice and a good habit to get into, to check your holes. On an opaque finish, like these white beads are, they tend to be pretty clear, but once you get up and start working with some of the Superduos that have fancy finishes and double colors and all kinds of different things going on with them, sometimes those holes can get clogged. And when you are coming around to that second hole, it's always a little bit frustrating if you can't get your needle through. Usually you can kind of wiggle it around and make it happen. But like I said, good practice to get into. So now what I'm doing is I'm moving all of those beads down to the end of my approximately 6-foot piece of WildFire. I'm double checking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I've noticed that I have added one extra yellow bead. Sometimes what happens when I'm teaching class and I'm trying to count at the same time, sometimes I add extra beads. So I'm just going to take that guy out. So I have 6 Superduos and 6 size 8 seed beads together. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to make these into a circle. So to do that, my thread is coming out of a Superduo, and I'm just going to go back through the first size 8 and continue that thread path all the way around to the very first bead again. So all we're doing is we are making a circle. And I have found that for each of the sizes that I played around with, starting with a count of 6 worked. If I were feeling more ambitious or adventuresome, perhaps I could have tried a beginning with 5 beads, maybe with 7 beads, but I'm sticking with 6. 6 was my count when I started, and 6 was working. So now one of the other things that Danielle and I were talking about is whether to knot or not to knot. I am a knotter. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to tie these 2 ends in an overhand knot. So it's actually a square knot. So right over, left. Just tighten that up, and left over right, and tighten it up. Okay, and now what you can do is you can come in here either with your scissors, or I like to use a cord cutter and just trim and seal that end. And now I don't have to worry about this little tail getting in my way as I'm beading. So now what I want to do is I'm going to just continue that thread path through, let's make sure that everyone can see very well, through that size 11 and through that next Superduo. So my needle is coming out from the bottom, or from the hole of the Superduo that it had already gone through. So now I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago that Superduos have special properties and special ways that you work with them. And this is why working with this black thread is a great way to be able to show what's happening. Because now what I'm doing, my thread is coming out the bottom of my Superduo. I'm going to go back through the top. And this, for those of you who know the nomenclature, this is the step up, or part of the step up. So you can see why having a white piece of thread against these white beads would be really good, because you wouldn't be able to see it. But when demonstrating, using the black is really, really helpful. Okay, so now what we're going to do is the second round. So Yvette is posting in the comments section what the counts are for each round. And the great thing about the pattern, not only for how I made it with the great big ostrich egg, but also for the, I guess, the mama egg and the baby egg, is each row increases by 1. And that's all you have to worry about. So each row increases by 1. Okay, so now what does that mean? The increase by 1 is on that size 8 seed bead. If I have been saying size 6s, I do apologize. These are size 8s. Sometimes, again, when you're doing the classes and the counting, sometimes my words get away from me. So for this round, I am now picking up 1 size 8, 1 Superduo, and 1 size 8. And what I'm going to do to form that net is go through now the top hole of the next Superduo in line, or in the circle, I should say. It's not a line, it's a circle. And I'm going to continue that pattern the whole way around. So this is a great project to learn the circular netting stitch because it's so repetitive. And the step ups, I'm going to keep saying it so we get used to that word, are not very difficult. So once again, here's the Superduo that my thread is coming out of. I'm going to go through that next one. And I'm going to continue that pattern 6 times, right? Because we're working in 6s. So all the way around. So I'm just going to do that very quickly up to speed so that you can see what I'm doing. And initially, when I was thinking about how I was going to show such a repetitive pattern in a class, I thought, gosh, I hope this doesn't get too repetitive for people. But I think it's good to see the steps over and over again, especially when we get to that ending part. And that's why rewatching on the Michael's Community Classroom YouTube channel is great, because if you're saying to yourself, okay, I got that round, no problem, I got that one, then you can go ahead and skip on to the next one. All right, so now we're back around to the beginning. And how do we know that we're back around to the beginning? Well, because I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And I'm on my 6th one. I can also tell because there's my little thread right here. So I can see, I know that this is the first Superduo from this round. And I can also tell because there's no place else for my needle to go. If I go up here, it's going to very quickly become obvious that it is not the right place for me to go. So those are 3 different ways that you can think to know that you are at the end of the round. So at the end of each round, this is the tricky part. Whenever I teach a class, I always say that there's always one tricky part. Here's our tricky part. So if you get this, you're golden. So I'm going to go through the top of that first Superduo. I am also going to go through the size 8 seed bead and the bottom of that Superduo. So you can think about this a couple of different ways, and I'm going to talk through the different ways as we, as we go through the rounds, because this will click in different ways for different people. Okay, so now just for a moment, I'm going to put that down. I'm going to come in for a nice little close-up, because if you wanted to, you could just stop right there, right? Wouldn't that be a nice component for a bracelet or for a pair of earrings or even for a pendant? I love how versatile the circular netting stitch comes out, because once you start having components like this, you can really, there are a lot of different things that you can do with them and a lot of different things to think about. But we are doing a netted Easter egg today. So we will continue with our project. So now, of course, we're not 100% done our step up, right? We did the first part of our step up, but the second part is we have to go back through the top of that Superduo so that we have gotten our thread ready for the next round. So if you think about it also, I don't know if everybody noticed, but the first round I went clockwise. And now which way does the clock go? The first round I went counterclockwise, and this round I'm now going clockwise. Okay, so you'll see that each time you go, your thread path is going around a different way. All right, so I mentioned that we are doing increases of 1. So last time I did 1 size 8, 1 Superduo, 1 size 8. This time we're doing 2 size 8s, 1 Superduo, and 2 size 8s. Okay. And so now, once again, we're always going through that top hole of the Superduo. And you can see that this is where, if one of those holes were clogged and you've already done the entire row, you just have to take it out again. I know we all hate taking, we hate undoing our bead work, but sometimes we need to. And you can certainly, if it's easier for you, just flip this and keep going in the same way. And I'll show that. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But if you find that you are going through the wrong beads, just be aware that of your direction. Okay. Because it might not matter. Sometimes I go one way, sometimes I go the other, but it might be much easier for you just to keep going one way. Okay, so now I know that I'm still going this way, and it's always the tops of the bead. So you can see why that 0.008 WildFire is really good to use on this project, because we're only going back through one of the Superduos once, and a couple of the size 8 seed beads once. So we don't have to worry about a thin thread going back through, say, size 15 seed beads a gazillion times. So as I'm going around here, and actually I will ask my question once we're at the next row, because I believe we are ready for our color change. Oh, no, we're gonna do one more row before our color change. Okay, so I just did that step up all in one pass, right? So I didn't even think about it. I just went through that last bead that I needed to go through, and the next 2 beads, and out that first bead, that first Superduo again. So I'll break it down again in the next round, but it's important to know that you can just kind of zip up on through and not really have to worry. But what you do always have to worry about is coming back through the top of that first Superduo once again. And again, I'm just going to put it down on the bead mat, because we've even done one more row. And how cute is that component, right? So we could do a whole class just on using different components and putting the pieces and the parts together. But I love how each component is just a little bit different and a little bit fun in its own right. So now we did one row of 1, one row of 2, and now we're going to do one row of 3. I say row, I really mean round. Okay, so, and you can see once again, my thread is coming out and facing toward me. If I want to flip this over the other way, I can certainly do that. There's no reason not to. So now we're going to do 1, 2, 3. And so what I was going to ask, but I came to the end of my round, is, has anybody who is watching today done any regular netted beadwork or circular netted beadwork? I'm always curious to know kind of where we are together and separately in our beading journey. Because there are always things for me to learn, and always reasons to wonder why everything just got a little bit loose. So you saw something was a little bit wonky there, right? And sometimes that happens when you are stringing, if you're maybe not paying attention or something gets caught on something. So I just did a little tighten and a little tighten, and no problem, everything snugged back up. And after this round, we're going to take a break and do a couple of things, because our egg shape is going to start taking shape. Okay, so, and sometimes if you're, not paying the closest of attention, or the dog starts barking, or one of the kids or the grandkids comes and gives you a little nudge, if you lose your place or lose your count, it's pretty easy on this kind of a project to be able to see where you need to start up again, which is why, again, this is a really good starter project for doing this type of beadwork. You can find the instructions when you are ready to go back and look at them in a couple of different places. They are always posted on the bottom of the YouTube video for the replay. You can also find them before they disappear on the sign up page on the Michael's Community Classroom site. So now I've come around here, I'm back again at the start. And how do I know I'm back at the start? Well, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? I just picked up my 6th one. And I also know, because there's that little telltale string right there. And I also know because the next Superduo in my round has thread coming out both sides. So this is where I need to do, again, that step up. Do not fear the step up. All you need to do for the step up is go through the top of that Superduo, the next 3, in this case, size 8 seed beads, and come out the bottom of that next Superduo. Okay. So all the step up is putting your needle back in position to do the next row. I always make a big deal about the step up because it is what challenged me for, I'm embarrassed to say, probably years in doing different bead weaving stitches. There's always a step up involved. Sometimes the step up is tricky. Sometimes the step up is not so tricky, but for whatever reason, the step up was my nemesis. Just for whatever reason, it really tripped me up. So I always want to take a lot of time to explain what it means and why we're doing it, so that you don't go through the same things that I did. Once again, right? Here we are, such a cute component. And each time I come to the next row, again, it makes me so happy to see it come up. Okay, so now this is when I start putting my form on my egg. If you took my netted holiday ornament class, or feel free to go back and search on that in the community classroom as well, you'll see that I did this for the holiday ornament also, because you just want to double check and make sure that all of your bead counts and all of your rows are correct. And this is the perfect way to be able to see that. If you skipped a row, if you went through a wrong bead someplace, putting your work on the form is going to bring that to your attention very, very quickly. It is also a perfect way to figure out the counts. So when I was designing this project, I knew in my mind what I wanted it to look like, but I didn't know what the counts were going to be. So each time I did a row, I put it on to the ostrich egg, and then I could see how many times I still needed an increase, and then when I needed to stop doing that increase, and then when I needed to start decreasing. And we're going to talk about all of these things in turn. I should mention that the ostrich egg does come in a plain, just a wood finish. And I used some paint. This particular paint is the Dilutions white paint from Ranger Ink, to paint it, but any acrylic paint would do. I just used like a foam brush, and painted it up. And you can, if you look closely, I did not do, a Michelangelo kind of a job on it, but it's mostly being hidden. So it's not a big deal. Okay, so now I'm ready for my color change. So if I want to follow along on the same pattern, let's move my naked egg out. If I want to follow along in the same pattern, I'd switch to the purple chalk beads. So all I need to do is just move my yellows to the side because I'm going to come back to them at the end and bring out some of the purples. And when you're doing a color change with this design, you don't have to do anything fancy, anything other than just start with the next color. So I did my step up, and I always like to double check, especially if I put my work down for a moment, that I did also go back through my Superduo. So my thread is exiting from the top. And now I have done my adding 1 here, adding 2 here, adding 3 here. So any guesses for what's coming next? Yes, it is adding 4. So we are going to pick up 4 size 8s, 1 Superduo, and 4 size 8s. And I really, again, I like using the Superduos for this type of a stitch and this type of a project because they just give it that extra little something something. It makes those diamonds just pop just a little bit more. It offsets the stitches just that little bit. And I like the shape. I really like how they look. If you were not using Superduos, as I mentioned, you might have to adjust your thread counts. You might be able to use the same thread counts if you used, say, a size 8 seed bead. You can substitute for these Superduos in a lot of different ways. You could, of course, choose a different color of Superduos. You could choose Czech glass beads. You could choose a gemstone. You just want to make sure that as the design is to your liking. I don't want to qualify it as anything more than that because you might like something to be a little bit more textured or a little more 3D. So maybe you use a cube bead in the middle and it actually kind of undulates. The seed beads go in and the cube brings it out. And just so many different possibilities. And those are my favorite projects to teach because they are projects where you can learn the technique and then substitute out whatever beads are in your stash that speak to you, or any beads that you find in the beading aisle that speak to you. Now here, this step up is very, very easy. And it is also a great learning device to do a different color for each row, because then it is very obvious where this step up is, right? Because I've come to my end. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is my 6th one. But really the best indicator is that I'm at the end of my yellows and I'm starting my purples again. So I'm going to take that step up all in one pass. And I'm going to go through the bottom of that Superduo, through those 4 purple beads, and then through the bottom of that first Superduo in the round. And so now I have added my whole round of purple. And the last step, of course, in the step up is to go back through the top of that Superduo. And this is when the netting starts to become more egg shaped, I guess is the best way of saying it. You want to keep medium tension. Oh, and we can see that I made a mistake. Did anybody see where my mistake is? This is a really good, I'm glad that I did that because you can, I'm going to talk about what happens when you make a mistake. So here's my mistake. I didn't add 4 beads before going through my last Superduo. right? That's what happens when you're talking and beading. So easy enough. And I recommend, I know that people don't always do this, but I recommend taking your needle off of your thread if you are going to start taking rows out. Okay. I know nobody likes having to thread their needle, but it is a lot easier to rethread your needle than it is to untangle tangled thread. Did I say that right? Yes. It is easier to rethread your needle than it is to untangle tangled thread. And now all I'm doing is I am backing out. I'm just pulling the thread out. So I'm not worrying about re-needling thread paths or anything. I'm just pulling that thread out and letting the beads fall down on my bead mat until I get back to where I made that error, where I missed those other 4 beads. So again, no big deal. It was what, a half of a row. It's going to take me all of, 3 or 4 minutes to fix my mistake and go back. That's one of, I don't know about you guys, but when I was first starting my bead journey, I did not like having to go back and fix mistakes. I do not like having to undo my work. I didn't like having to re-needle my needle. And I made a lot of very small mistakes much worse by not just having the patience to take something out and start back over again. And that took me a long time and I'm still not great at taking projects apart. And that's another thing I would love to know from everybody who is watching today. Are you okay with taking apart your projects? I'm getting better at it. It's still definitely a challenge for me. So now what I'm going to do after I finish this round is I want to show a couple of things, because of course in the next 18 to 20 minutes that we have left in our class today, I am certainly not going to be able to go and bead the entire egg. But I think that we probably have gotten the important parts by now, but I will not leave you without knowing how to finish things off. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and so once again, now my thread, my bead count, and all of my my directions or my beads are correct. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to make sure that I'm going through that last Superduo in the round. I'm doing that step up all together through all of those purple beads, through the bottom hole of that Superduo, and pulling everything tight. And I am now going to put my beaded piece, my netted piece, on the top of my egg. And I can see that this time, in fact, I did do it correctly. And it was very obvious when I made that mistake the last time, that when I put it onto the egg, it didn't look right. And I had to take it off and diagnose what I had done wrong. So now I can see I've done everything correctly and I'm ready for my next row. Now, I have done 1, I have done 2, I have done 3, I have done 4. For our pattern, what you want to continue to do is each row, as you build it, you are going to continue to add 1. So you can see here on the finished product, here's the 3, here's the 4, here's the 5, here's 6. And then I changed colors again and I did 7. And then I did 8. And when I got to 8, I realized that on the egg, that was the widest part. So wherever on your egg that you are beading up, Whatever the widest part is, when you get to that part, that's when you know that you don't need to do any more increases. You don't need to add another count in the next round. So for this project here, I got up to 8. And then as I was putting that beadwork on my egg each time, I could see that I got up to 8. I did another row of 8. Then I was ready to start my decrease. So then round 10 and round 11 are 8. Then round 12 ends up being 7. Round 13, hold on, I just want to make sure, 2, 4, 6, 7. So round 14, I also did 6. Just trying to say, yep, 6, okay. Am I counting correctly? 7, so then I did 6, and then I did 5. And then when I got to the very end, instead of bringing it to a tip here, because this end was flat, right? What I did for my very last round is I did 7 again. And I kind of messed around with this count a little bit to see how it ended up working out for me. You might want it to be a little bit tighter. You might want it to be a little bit looser. So that is what I did for the flat bottom. For the round bottoms, I came in a lot closer. So I came up to 7 on this one. And I knew, because I kept putting it on, that I needed to stop at 7. And then I came down to 6 here. And then I actually went from 6 to 4. And then after 4, I put these all together. And now I am going to post all of these different thread counts on the Beadalon.com website. Hopefully we'll be able to get them over to Michael's as well. But if nothing else, you'll be able to find them on Beadalon.com in our learning center over the next couple of days. I haven't done them quite yet. So I talked through that, and we are going to get to that in just a second. But before we get there, I would like to show adding thread. Another thing that can be a little intimidating, right, is, and one of the reasons why sometimes we use a ton of thread in our projects and it ends up getting all tangled. So let's pretend I've gone a bunch of rows and I am now at the end of my thread. I only have this much left. So there are several ways that you can do this. I'm going to show you how I do it. Perhaps it's cheating. Perhaps it's just doing something to make my life as easy as humanly possible. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to take another piece of thread. I like working with a 5 to 6 foot piece of thread, no matter what, unless I'm doing something where I know I only need a little tiny bit. So I pull out about a wingspan, about, like I said, between 5 to 6 feet of thread. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a square knot to tie those 2 pieces of thread together. So right over left, left over right, pull it together. And again, because my seed beads and my Superduos have large holes, this knot will fit through my beads as I'm working on it, and I don't have to worry about doing anything else. I don't have to worry about anything fancy for this project, just making sure that my knot is nice and tight. And again, I can either take my scissors or a cord cutter. And for those of you who don't know, the cord cutter is a great little device. It heats up really hot, so you have to be super careful. But you can see I just cut and sealed the ends of that WildFire really, really fast. And then you would, again, needle your thread over here and just pretend like nothing ever happened. And sometimes you have to kind of finagle that knot through your beads. Sometimes it might come apart like it did just there, and sometimes that's going to happen. All you need to do is just retie it and perhaps do it a little bit closer to your bead, because for whatever reason, my knot was not happy with me. And so we're just going to tie it again and keep going. Bear with me for 1 second. And I know that Danielle from John Bead would probably weave her ends in and then start again with a nicely woven in end. And that's okay too. If you want to put a little dab of glue on there, awesome. I definitely, I recommend putting a little dab of glue for a little security. But if you tie a better knot than I did the first time, you really shouldn't need the glue. But glue is a great way to go. And I would recommend the Beadalon bead stringing glue to do that. And if you don't have a cord cutter, really sharp scissors are great. Also, I just like the magic of the cord cutter. Okay, so I'm gonna do one more round, and then I'm gonna show kind of taking it and making it a little bit smaller, and then our work here will be done. Let's see, so now I'm up to 5. I don't want to put 6 on, I want to do 5. And the best advice I can give for cutting WildFire if you don't have a cord cutter is, keep putting on 6. I don't know why I want to do that, is to have a dedicated pair of really sharp scissors for your WildFire, because it is a braided, very, very strong thread. It does have a tendency to take a toll on your scissors. So I wouldn't recommend using your good paper crafting scissors. I wouldn't recommend using your fabric scissors. I don't know if anybody out there is as crazy as I am about their different scissors and their different uses. But everybody in my family knows that if they go near my fabric scissors, for example, big trouble. But the WildFire scissors, you want to keep them as sharp as possible. And if you are able to have them be dedicated to just cutting WildFire, another tip for cutting WildFire is to pull the WildFire as far back in the jaw of the scissors as you can. So rather than cutting it, let me just get a little piece here, rather than cutting it up here in the scissors, you want to hold it back here and kind of pull it against the jaw of the scissors. And then that will also give you a really nice cut. And if you don't have WildFire, another great material for this project would be, you could use Dandelion, you could use Supple Max. I haven't used Beadalon bead stringing wire for it, but I don't know any reason why you couldn't use like a 0.012 19 strand or like a really thin bead stringing wire. A thinner WildFire, like the 0.006, would work just fine. And I'm just going to demonstrate, since we have a lot of beads here, I want to show this step up one last time. So I know I've come to the end of my row because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6th one is on my needle. And my little telltale thread path right there. And I'm going to come through there, through all of those seed beads and the bottom of that top Superduo. So again, you can do it in more than one pass if you would like, but I always find doing it in one pass to be the easiest. And then of course, you always want to come back through the top of that Superduo. And then fingers crossed, with all of that talking and explaining, I got all of my counts and everything right. And that's how I know I'm going to put it on the top of my egg to see. Now, this egg is definitely a keeper, but if I wanted to do a smaller egg, I could do that too. And this is where I would likely stop and continue with a 2, 4, 5 count, or maybe a 6 count. I might have to do an experiment, right, to see which count I liked better. But as you could see from me pulling it apart before, no big deal. If your count doesn't work the first time, just pull it out and try it again. So what I want to show really quickly is bringing everything back together, because I feel like that could be a little bit of a tricky proposition. Now, I don't have anything small enough to be able to put in here, but I think that we're going to be able to make it work. So I did a row of 2, 4, 5, and now I'm going to switch my color back, and I'm going to do pink to show how to do it a little bit clearer. That's the word that I'm looking for. So we're going to do a drastic decrease. So I'm going from 5, I'm going to do 3. Okay. So we're going to pick up the 3 size 8 seed beads. I'm going to pick up 1 Superduo and 3 more size 8s. And again, keeping in my thread path, and this is my little tail from where I added the thread. I'll go back and snip that off of it when it gets in my way too much. And once again, I'm going all the way around, and you can see how it cinches up. Don't worry about keeping it cinched the whole time. It'll all come together at the end. So I'm just going to put that down for a second. And the counts that I worked up, I know work for size 8 seed beads and these Superduos. But I encourage you, in fact, I challenge you to try this pattern, this project with size 11 seed beads. Hey, I challenge you to do it with size 15 seed beads. That's for the brave. The very brave among us will do it with size 15 seed beads. You could do it with delicates. That would be really, really pretty. You could do, my favorite way to do netting, actually, well, before I discovered how much I like doing it with Superduos, is to actually do size 11 seed beads and then delicas as the join points. That's how I like doing beaded beads. That's how I like doing netted tubes, for lack of a better word, for necklaces. I think that there's a project that's posted in the Michael's project sites that I did using a slightly different netting technique using size 11 seed beads. But you can do this with gemstones. You could do this with, gosh, I mean, again, once you have the technique, just play around. And it doesn't have to be an egg either, right? You could, where I really got excited about this technique is doing beaded Christmas tree ornaments. Okay, so now, once again, and it starts to get a little fiddly when you start doing the decreases, but it's the exact same technique. I've now just gone to 2 all the way around. I've come, and I know that I'm back at the beginning, so I need to do my step up, right, to that next Superduo. And if your Michael's in your area is out of the wooden eggs, which unfortunately at this time of year would not surprise me, try it with a different kind of egg, right? They have these great little packs of different sizes of eggs. I guess they're made to go in like a charger of some sort. These kinds of eggs you can do it with. A styrofoam egg would work. The texture of the styrofoam might, I don't know, I might not like that. Maybe not like working with that, but I haven't tried it. So maybe it would be great. Anything that is egg shaped would work, right? I'm sure that in the decor section, you might be able to find something that's pre-made that you can repurpose and bead around it. So now what I'm doing, I did the 3. Now I'm just going down to 2 to really, let's actually add 2, right? Instead of 2 and 1. We're going to do a round of 2 and then pull everything together, and then we will be on our way. So you want to make sure, hopefully if you have made a little bit of the project along with me, or if you haven't, let's pay attention to what's going on, Meredith. Go ahead, and when you post it on your Instagram or on your Facebook page, because you're so proud of yourself that you took a class and you learned how to do something fun, make sure that you use the hashtag Make It With Michaels. I've also seen a lot of people using the hashtag Made It With Michaels. So I actually have both of those that I use and that I look for when I'm looking for projects. I would also be greatly appreciative if you use the hashtag Make It With Beadalon, because we are, of course, teaching this class as Beadalon. And I'm not 100% sure, Danielle, if you can chime in with what John Bead likes to use for their hashtag. I don't know if theirs is Make It With John Bead or if it's just John Bead. But maybe she can let us know as well, so that everybody can tag all of the wonderful companies that do so much for us to inspire and spark our creativity. Hashtag John Bead. All right, there you go. And then what I have been really loving doing is people who have started following me on Instagram. I'm at Meredith Joy Designs. I like following back. And then my feed starts blowing up with all kinds of amazing creative ideas and designs. And that's fantastic for me. All right, so now we are at the very last row, and it kind of looks like I don't know, like a silly little hat. We'll have to figure out a way to actually make this into a usable project. But once again, I did that step up, and I'm just going to bring everything together so we have that really nice star design that we started and finished with. So Michelle, what I'm doing is I'm actually showing just the finishing technique. I don't have an actual egg that would be going into this opening. What I would do is I would do it on the egg, but time got away from me and I did not have one wholly finished. So we just have to pretend like there's a little egg in here. I'm looking around on my work surface to see if there's something that I can throw in here that would have the effect. And unfortunately I don't. So we're just going to have to use our imaginations and pretend like there's an egg in here. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to take one seed bead, and almost just like I did in the beginning, right? There becomes one seed bead in between each of these Superduos all the way around. So we have kind of an invisible, silly shaped egg in the, in the middle here. We'll use our imagination so that we'll know how to do the finishing techniques for any different count that you come up upon. And I think I have one left to go through. And then after, whenever I do circular beadwork like this, if you remember that very first step that I did when I added each of 6 Superduos and 6 seed beads, I went through them all twice, right? That is always the best way, I think, to get everything cinched up the way that you want it to be at the end of your design. So you can see things are still a little bit loose. And again, everybody use your imagination. We've got a little wonky shaped egg in here already, holding on to the form. If I had had a little bit more time, we would have been able to get an actual enough rows. But I think we got the project and all of the steps underway, no problem. We talked about adding thread, and now the last step is just making sure that everything here is cinched up. And now once again, I am going to tighten everything up, kind of wiggle it around. And then I'm a knotter, so I'm just gonna come under here. I'm gonna knot an overhand knot once, an overhand knot twice. And I'm just doing it right in between. See if we can see that a little bit better. Sorry, guys. In between those beads. And then if you want, you can go through and reinforce the thread path, tuck your thread ends in, and then snip them off. And this is my silly little malformed egg. I'll have to figure out a way to turn this into something. I like the idea of maybe putting some batting inside. But I think that this is going to be one of those things that's just a demonstration for class purposes to show all of the different steps that you need to go through. And the actual egg is going to be my crowning achievement, if you will, with all of the different colorways and then bringing everything together at the end. And I just love the way that it sits also right on that little row of seed beads, and how each different piece and part of the project fits together so nicely. And each different piece and part of the project can be a piece or a part of a project itself. So hopefully you have learned from all of the different tips, tricks, and techniques that I showed today. And remember, not just an egg form can you put in the middle. You could use a marble. You could use a bead. You could use a bead and do the netting around it and put a head pin through and connect it to something else. Of course, a Christmas tree ornament. Anything round, oblong, you can do this technique really with so many different shapes. And I'm so very much looking forward to seeing what everybody comes up with on their own. So once again, I am Meredith Roddy for Beadalon and Artistic Wire. Thank you so much for joining me in the Michaels Community Classroom. And we will see you again on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturdays, some Saturdays, also at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for more learning and more fun and more projects. So thank you so very much for joining me today. And until next time, happy beading.